Hello, thanks for joining us. Today we are diving into the resurrection of Jesus. We plan to talk about this in depth, right, Amanda?
Oh, yes, Pastor Dan. Everyone sit back, because we are going to take you for a ride.
Chapter 1: The Empty Tomb. Eyewitness Accounts.
Okay, so the empty tomb. Let's start with that. It's such a massive part of the resurrection story, right? Because without it, the idea of Jesus rising from the dead doesn't even, take off.
Exactly. It's the first tangible evidence of the resurrection. And what's truly fascinating is how all four Gospels emphasize one detail. It was women who discovered the empty tomb.
Yeah, and you know what's wild about that? Back in that culture, women's testimonies weren't even taken seriously in legal or religious settings. So if someone was, making this up, they definitely wouldn't have used women as the primary witnesses. It just wouldn't make strategic sense.
No, it wouldn't. Which is why it's often argued that this detail adds a layer of credibility to the story. It's as though the writers were committed to recording what really happened, even if it challenged societal norms at the time.
Totally. And for me, it kinda hits home how powerful witnessing history up close can be. I remember this one time. I was visiting a historic tomb. Not like this tomb, obviously, but somewhere significant where big events happened. And standing there, I could literally imagine how it must have felt back then.
Right. That moment where history suddenly feels alive. And when we think about the women at the empty tomb, they weren't just seeing a piece of history. They were experiencing something world-changing. Something almost unimaginable.
And yet their instinct would have been pure emotion, confusion, shock, maybe even fear. I mean, they went there to mourn, and instead, the tomb is empty. It flips everything they expected on its head, and yet their instinct would have been pure emotion, confusion, shock, maybe even fear. I mean, they went there to mourn, and instead, the tomb is empty. It flips everything they expected on its head.
And that unexpectedness is what makes this story so compelling. Their reactions, in all their rawness, give it an authenticity that's hard to overlook.
But also, how crazy would those first few moments have been? You're standing there, looking into an empty tomb. And then you're the one has to tell people. The pressure must have been insane.
Absolutely. And yet, they do speak out. And their accounts pave the way for everything that follows in this story, making them the first witnesses to perhaps the most significant event in Christian history. Chapter 2: Post-Resurrection Appearances and Their Impact.
Following those women at the tomb, what really gets me are these appearances. They're so personal, right? Jesus didn't just pop in and out of scenes. He spent time with people, talked to them, ate with them.
He did, and those moments are deeply significant. They reinforce the idea that this wasn't just a vision or a hallucination. These were physical, tangible interactions. The disciples touched him, sat with him, and witnessed something completely outside normal human experience.
And isn't it wild that he appeared to over 500 people at once? I mean, that's not just a small group of followers convincing themselves they saw something. That's hundreds of people witnessing the same event. Exactly. And historically, it's worth noting how unique that is. It's rare to have such widespread reports of any singular event, especially in ancient history. I once interviewed a historian who said having multiple independent accounts like these is a huge factor in supporting the validity of an event. It just adds so much weight to the narrative. Totally. And what I think is so interesting is how ordinary some of those moments are. You know? Like Jesus cooking breakfast for his disciples by the sea. It's so simple, but there's this power in the normalcy. It's almost like he was saying, I'm fully here. This is real.
Right. Those ordinary details make it incredibly relatable. They ground the resurrection in real, lived experiences, which is why these accounts resonate so strongly, even centuries later.
It's just such a contrast from the dramatic tone of like the empty tomb, though. This feels calm, steady, like he's slowly bringing them to understand what's just happened.
In doing so, he's giving them time to process it. These encounters aren't just about proving he's alive. They're about preparing them for what comes next.
Yeah, and it's funny, because at first, their reactions are all over the place. Shock, disbelief, even fear. But each interaction kind of builds this foundation for like a totally new understanding of everything they thought they knew.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, these moments aren't just significant for them. They're significant for the entire faith. They're the bridge between belief and action, between what they saw and what they would eventually do.
Chapter 3: The Transformation of the Disciples and the Resurrection's Legacy.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Their transformation is one of the most compelling pieces of this narrative. They were hiding, disillusioned, and then suddenly, they're out there preaching with such conviction, even under persecution.
And it's not just, oh, they felt happier and had a bit more confidence. We're talking about a complete 180. People don't willingly face death unless they really, really believe in what they're saying.
Precisely. And that conviction, that boldness, it's directly tied to the resurrection. Paul says it in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 14, right? If Christ hasn't been raised, our preaching is in vain, and so is your faith. It's all hinges on the resurrection as the foundation of their belief.
Yeah, like if the resurrection hadn't happened, why bother risking their lives? It'd make no sense. And I think about that a lot. It's how transformative moments can totally, rewire how we see the world.
Absolutely. Transformation like that doesn't happen without something seismic. Something that shifts your entire understanding of reality. Absolutely. Transformation like that doesn't happen without something seismic. Something that shifts your entire understanding of reality.
For sure. And it kind of reminds me of this little experience I had. Obviously, not world-changing like theirs, but it stuck with me. A while back, I was working on this big project, and I was failing miserably, big-time failure. But then I had this conversation with someone who just flipped my perspective, And from that moment, it was like everything clicked. It wasn't easy, but I had that sense of, okay, I can do this now.
It's those turning point moments. They don't just help us understand our circumstances, they reshape how we move forward. With the disciples, it was much more profound. A spiritual awakening prompted by witnessing the resurrection. But the idea remains similar. It's life-altering.
Exactly. And that's what makes their story so powerful, even now. It's like this timeless reminder that transformation is possible, no matter how hopeless things seem.
And it's not just their transformation that's significant. It's the legacy of that transformation. They didn't just hold on to the experience. They shared it. They lived it. And that's what gave birth to the early church and spread the message across the world.
Right. And in a way, that kinda makes the resurrection not just this event in history, but this ongoing thing that keeps transforming people. That's why it's still so relevant, even thousands of years later.
And that's why it's the cornerstone of the faith. It's not just about what happened, it's about what it continues to mean. Courage, hope, renewal, all grounded in that moment. Only shadows melting into darkness. And that's why it's the cornerstone of the faith. It's not just about what happened, it's about what it continues to mean. Courage, hope, renewal, all grounded in that moment. Only shadows melting into darkness. Exactly. And that's the power of the resurrection. It invites us to believe in restoration, even in the midst of brokenness. And on that note, I think that's the perfect place to wrap up. What an incredible journey through this story. It's been so good diving into this with you, Pastor Dan.
It truly has. These stories never lose their impact, do they?
Never. And to everyone listening, we hope this has inspired you as much as it's inspired us. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Please like, share, and subscribe.